this is Mario, Swiss Car Guy on YouTube, and today I'm driving my 2009 Nissan GT-R. This is a car I've owned for almost 3 years, and still it's a car you've never seen on this channel because I sort of haven't really driven it that much. I recently did a video about why I love my Lexus LS600H, and so I thought it was about time I do a video about this car as well, since it's just sitting around. This video is gonna comprise of basically 3 parts. First, it would be like now me driving around, talking about the car, doing some sort of a mini review, stuff I love, stuff that bothers me, reasons why I bought that car and how I bought it back then. And in the second part, I will go into the cost of ownership part. And if you're only interested in the cost of ownership part, then you can skip to the time code at
30 minutes and 41 seconds.
And at the very end, for the people who really stick to the video till the very end, I will show a very short clip of a time lapse of food being prepared, because why not, right? So first, the Nissan GT-R. This is actually one of my dream cars. It probably is my dream sports car. Previously to this, I had a Porsche 996 Turbo. I also made a video about that car. That was a car I was amazed I could buy back then. I was able to afford, but it was never a car I really dreamed about. It was a car I always respected. It was a car I knew was a very capable sports car, but even when I was younger, when that car was new, it wasn't one of my dream cars. I'd always much rather have had a contemporary Ferrari or something like this. But the Nissan GT-R is a dream car of mine. And in fact, back when I bought the Porsche, I had considered buying a Nissan GT-R, but they were much more expensive back then. So the very cheapest one was like 62,000 Swiss francs. And we're talking, when was that? 2014 or something like that. And no, it didn't make sense for me to spend so much money on a car, especially since I didn't have 62,000 Swiss francs back then. So yeah, that's a very good reason for not spending the money, right? It was pretty much exactly 3 years ago that I had a 2017 Nissan GT-R for testing, for reviewing. And of course, me always dreaming of a Nissan GT-R, it was a bit of a dream come true. And I'd driven that car, and at first I didn't really love it, but the more I drove it, the more I started loving the car. And then, I was really starting considering to sell my Porsche 996 Turbo, because the GT-R was just better in every way. Sure, the Porsche was a manual, the GT-Rs are only dual clutch automatics. I'm personally not bothered by an automated transmission because I use this car also for my daily commute, and that means a lot of stop and go traffic. And a manual, especially like the Porsche 996 Turbo with its hydraulically assisted clutch that has basically no feel, it's a lot of work for a daily commute, and this automatic is a lot more comfortable in that regard. But back then I thought, well, maybe the 996 is not really slow, or maybe I'm just imagining things. So I basically drove a street I knew very well with the GT-R, and then the next day I drove it with the Porsche, and on corners that with the GT-R I took with absolute ease. With the Porsche it was kind of, I'm gonna die. So for me it was obvious the GT-R was the much better car to drive, and I finally had to have one. Unfortunately, prices had also started to come down, so I was sort of able to afford one if I sold the Porsche. So the Porsche got sold, and then I started looking for GT-Rs, and I first looked at one that was, cheapest GT-R on the Swiss market. And that was actually not too bad of a car. It had some upgrades, some performance upgrades, all officially entered in the car's documents. But the car was, it was scratched. The outside had some really deep scratches, and it's something that really bothers me, because it basically needed to be resprayed, because you cannot polish them out or something like that. So that was basically a no-go for me. And then I went to the second cheapest GT-R, and which was this one. I went to look at it, I drove it, it drove well, the dealer selling it was somebody quite familiar with these cars. And I was kind of trusting of them, because when I bought this car, and I already said it in the Lexus video, I did a big no-no. But this time I didn't buy the car sight unseen, but I did buy a car without any service history. This car does not have any service history, and this is not good. It's not something you should do. Basically the seller just told me, you know, the car, it has been looked after, the bell housing of the transmission has been replaced, and the car is actually fine. But I just have to trust his words. I have nothing in writing. But then again, now 3 years later, the car still drives fine. I haven't had any issues, and especially the gearboxes in GT-Rs can be a bit of a problem, and my car shifts really fine. In fact, I had to go to Nissan to get something fixed, and the GT-R service tech, he drove my car, he got out, and then he told me like, wow, this car shifts really nicely. And I went like, don't all GT-Rs shift this way? And he told me just, if you only knew. So guess I got lucky on that. But now, why would somebody want an Nissan GT-R? Well, let me first put it into sports mode, or R mode as it's called. Let's go into manual, and then let's, you know, thrash it. Oh my god. Oh yes. You see, this is where a GT-R really shines. When it gets basically thrash, when it gets driven really hard, when a normal driver like me drives way over his comfort level and probably way over his abilities. Because the GT-R is that kind of car that just, it does it all for you. You don't have to be a good driver, you don't have to know anything, you just have to sort of point it at where you want to go, accelerate, and the car will do everything, and it will do it awesomely. And now you might say, well, where's the involvement in this? And it's not a real driver's car. Oh boy, it is. Because if you are a real driver, besides turning off all the driver aids, which you could if you don't value your life, this is a car that still complements you. If you know what you're doing, you can be incredibly fast in this thing. And the other thing, of course, you see, the GT-R is basically not a car that's been designed to showboat and everything. Even though I believe the car holding the record for the fastest drift in the world is a GT-R, a highly modified one. But the GT-R is basically built to go fast in pretty much any condition. And this is something you just have to like or not like. Because I know many guys would prefer, you know, something rear-wheel drive with a stick. Personally, I don't, because the GT-R is fast. It's fast under any condition. It's fast in the rain. It's fast in the snow. I just love it. And in fact, I've driven this car through 2-3 winters. Yeah, before I had the Lexus, this was also my winter car. And it did absolutely great. Just fitted with some Michelin Pilot Alpine tires, and the car goes everywhere. And by the way, I'm actually driving this car so little since I got the Lexus that it's still on winter tires, and it's the end of June. So yeah, I figured it's not worth putting summer tires on, because I'm not going to drive this car enough for that. So I'm driving around in the summer on winter tires. And yes, I don't put them on myself because I was too cheap to buy wheels for them. So I only have the tires and always have to have them put onto the rims. So I have to have the garage do it. And you know, for a car that I drive probably 2,000 kilometers a year, something like that, this year it didn't really make sense. I didn't really get to it. And also this year I won't be driving my car, any car, for 3 months for reasons I mentioned in another video. So I'll just keep the winter tires on, and in October the car will be ready for winter. Now you might wonder, hey, you own a Nissan GT-R and you apparently like it very much. Why don't you drive it a lot? Well, in my Lexus video I mentioned I really love my Lexus. It's a great everyday car. It's comfortable, it's smooth, it's powerful, it's roomy. This car is powerful, it's not comfortable, it's not really roomy, and it's not very practical. And yes, now you might say, Mario, you are really boring, you want a practical car and everything. Yeah, the Lexus is already not super practical, but you can fit 4 to 5 people in it. In this one, it's basically a 2-seater. The rear seats are just shelf space. Also, last week, I picked up an e-bike in my Lexus. So I just put it somewhere, slid it in the back somehow, and it worked, even though that's an unpractical car. In this car, I couldn't have done it, so yeah. Plus also, as I mentioned already, I am a really cheap guy, so I don't pay for 2 parking spaces. Instead, I keep my second car at my mom's house because she has 2 spaces anyway. But my mom lives over 1 hour away, so it's not like, today I'm gonna take the GT-R, and tomorrow I'm gonna take the Lexus. No, when I take a car, I have to stick with it for a week or 2 unless I go visit my mom again. And it's not like I don't want to go visit my mom. I'm not an asshole, but I don't go there every day. It's over an hour away, so usually I prefer to have the Lexus because it's just more versatile, it's just more comfortable than the Nissan, even though the GT-R is great fun to drive. But then there's this other thing that makes me love the GT-R a bit less than I probably would want to, and it's the comfort. And now I know people will come, oh God, Mario, you're so old, you want a car that's comfortable. Yes, I kind of do. I originally mentioned that I drove a 2017 GT-R, and 2017 is much different actually from the 2009 like mine. Not only did they redesign the interior, I think in some part they made it a bit less unique, but in some part they improved it, but also the newer cars are much more comfortable. The suspension has gotten much softer. In fact, I don't know, I've read it somewhere on the internet that basically only the Nismo has stiffer suspension than the 2009 GT-Rs. So basically the newer GT-Rs, they became so soft that they had to make a hardcore version. And in daily driving, especially if you're driving on roads that are not super well maintained, it kind of gets really uncomfortable when you're just being bounced around. And plus the thing that actually annoys me most about this car is it's really sort of difficult to park. And I know, yes, I'm talking about parking a Nissan GT-R, which is of course the stuff you all are interested in, but honestly, parking this car is bad because this is 2009. 2009 didn't come with parking sensors. 2009 didn't come with rear view cameras. In fact, I believe parking sensors on the GT-R have only become available with the 2017 facelift. Before they were not even an option. And the backup camera has become available as an option, I believe, from 2012 on. So the first 4 years of the GT-R did not have any backup camera or parking sensors. And this is a car that's terrible to see out of the back. So that makes it not very great for a daily driver. Plus, the turning radius is huge. So you have to maneuver a lot to enter into a parking space, and then you have to really guess the distances. Fortunately, my car, a European 2009 model, already has the later sat-nav. So it has a navigation unit that in America, I believe, was introduced in the 2012 model year. And that one actually is already prepared for having the backup camera. So I bought a wiring harness from somebody on the internet who does them, and a backup camera that I think I bought either from eBay or from AliExpress for $20, but more on that later. and I installed it, and now I have a functioning backup camera that looks almost stock. And this makes already quite a bit difference, because now I can sort of park the car and actually see if I'm gonna crash into a wall or something like that. But it's ridiculous that even though the navigation unit was ready for a backup camera, it wasn't introduced until like 4 years after it came out. It's insane. These really tight corners are corners where the GT-R doesn't excel. The GT-R is good in fast corners, in longer corners, but in those really tight ones, because also it's 4x4, it tends to start to lock up the differentials and jump around. The nice thing about the GT-R is that this is still sort of an old school car. When it came out, it was like, oh, this is such a technological car, but driving it nowadays, it feels positively old school. Yes, it has a flappy pedal gearbox, but it's a good one, it's fine. But what's nice, and I think this is something we are losing nowadays, and it is a loss that I mourn, this car has turbo lag. And turbo lag is a good thing, because first you accelerate and there is nothing, and then boom, the power comes in. And yes, it's of course less refined than a car with a really progressive power delivery, but it's so much more fun, it's so much more entertaining to drive. And I really hate that turbo lag is going away, because all the cars now make all this torque super low down, and there's basically no fun anymore in revving the car out. And the GT-R is still, you know, old school in that regard. It has turbo lag and it's fun to drive. Considering that when this car came out in 2007, 2008, it was considered to be technologically super advanced. I mean, it still holds up well today, but I actually love that the car feels mechanical. It feels kind of old school and retro, and you also hear it from the drivetrain. It makes noises, everything. You can hear the differentials lock up. And the GT-R is one of those cars that it's an enabler. It's an evil car. It wants you to drive faster and faster. You see a corner, you accelerate, because you know the car can handle it. It's just so much fun. And yeah, also one of the reasons why I do not drive it that much, because I tend to drive this car a bit faster than I should. And given already in my Lexus I get my license suspended, if I drove around more in this, I would probably get, you know, the electric chair or something like that. So this is also a reason why I don't drive it that much, because the car is not that comfortable. And it actually comes to life once you drive it really hard and fast. And that means it basically also always wants you to drive hard and fast. And this is just something that in the real world is not going to work for a long time. This is a 2009 GT-R, so it's basically a first model year GT-R. And the early GT-Rs like mine, they have 485 horsepower. The later ones, they got more and more power progressively, and I think now they are at 570 horsepower. That said, I drove a 2017 with 570 horsepower, and I know this one very well with 485 horsepower, and to be honest, while driving, I cannot feel the difference. In fact, I would even say that this earlier car, because it's less cushiony, it's less comfortable, it feels even more raw and more aggressive. This is something that actually kind of astonished me the first time I drove this car, because I only knew the newer car. And also, this is something that's quite rare. I'm pretty sure my car is one of the very few GT-Rs that has not, been tuned. So it still outputs the stock performance, stock power. The engine has not been touched. The only thing that I have done on this car is I have upgraded the transmission software. Because you see, these early GT-Rs, the transmission was a bit less refined because they had less time to tune it and everything. And second, if you wanted to use launch control, which the car had, the launch control on the early GT-Rs was incredibly aggressive, and it could damage the transmission. So it was entirely possible that within using, launch control 10 times, you had broken your transmission. So I wanted to be able to use the launch control, even though since I've owned this car, I've used it like 3 times, and 1 time to make this video. But I bought a COB access port. That's a little programming computer that you can plug into your OBD port, and then you can upload, maps. And I just flashed the transmission software with a later one that has a launch control mode that doesn't destroy the transmission but still propels you ahead quite nicely. And I also, not only did I install a later software, but I also installed a modified software, because usually when you drive the GT-R in automatic mode, it drives in really tall gears, it's really sluggish, it takes forever to shift down. And so I basically installed an optimized software that drives in lower gear, keeps higher revs, but also means the car feels much more alive when it's in automatic mode. If you don't want this, then just shift manually. And I'd rather have it this way than the other way around, so I installed this software. Speaking of launch control, let's try it out. Oh my god, this is still impressive. Absolutely impressive. Oh my god. But other than that, the car is stock. And I think this is quite something rare for Nissan GT-Rs, because it's basically a tuner's favorite. The car are very tunable, but I live in Switzerland, and in Switzerland, whatever you do, if you don't want to do it illegally and lose your insurance coverage, it takes a lot of money to get it certified, and also you have very limited things you can actually even do. So yeah, I don't really care for it. Also, even if I don't drive this car a lot, it's still a daily driver for me, so it has to be reliable. And I don't want to risk the reliability of the car by, pushing the boost and changing the downpipes. This car even has a stock exhaust. I think, honestly, this must be the only GT-R driving around with a stock exhaust. So, yeah. Previous owner did some aesthetic modifications. For example, he put some carbon fiber things on it, which I don't really care for, but yeah. Especially the roof. He put in some sort of a carbon fiber sort of roof, which looks like really carbon fiber. It also has like imperfection in it and stuff. I don't think they did such a great job, because I'm pretty sure a headliner GT-R should not, be this floppy and flexible. And maybe one day I have to get around and fix this and stabilize it, but I can't be bothered. Basically, I've not had a lot of issues with this car. I haven't driven it that much, but besides normal servicing, and I have to admit, I'm not servicing this car as regularly as it should, because I drive it like 3,000 kilometers a year, and therefore I'm not going to make yearly inspection on the car and yearly service for a car that's driven so little, especially it's not tracked and nothing. So basically I'll have the car serviced about every 10,000 kilometers, which in my case is about 2 to 3 years. But I still have jobs done. For example, I had the rear brakes changed because they had reached the minimum thickness that they could have, and so I had to get new rotors and pads, and Nissan wanted like 5,000 Swiss francs just for the rotors and the pads without the work, and I think that is really insane. So I bought aftermarket rotors, which sort of are not legal because I don't have a certificate for them, which I would need, but they are made by Brembo, the same company that makes the original rotors. They look absolutely identical, and they cost about 890 francs or something like that for 2 rotors instead of the 2,500 that Nissan wanted. So yeah, that's kind of a good deal. And the brake pads in Switzerland, you can put on pretty much any brake pads you like. So I bought Endless MX-72 brake pads from Japan. Don't remember what they cost, but VoiceOver Mario will tell you later on.
No.
With this car, since I've had it, I've basically only had 2 issues. One was tire pressure sensors failing, because the car is around 10 years old. These batteries in the sensors only last that long. So I had to have sensors replaced in, I think, at least 2 wheels. Oh no, and especially in one wheel, a valve failed, and so the tire would keep losing air. So I had to have that replaced. And then I've had, and this was a major issue, I've had the infotainment system actually fail. And that was a big one, because the screen wouldn't light up anymore, and on a GT-R you want to have your screen with the additional instruments here and all the gauges and stuff, because that's super awesome, and it's also actually quite helpful to see where you're doing, what your oil pressure is, if the oil is up to temperature, and to see how many G's you're pulling and whatever. So this is definitely something you don't want to lose. But also the problem is, if the infotainment screen fails, you lose your air conditioning. And when I say air conditioning, I don't just mean the air conditioning, but I mean the climate control. So you cannot change the temperature anymore, you cannot use defrost anymore. The car is basically useless if you drive it in winter. And you can guess when the stuff broke for me. It was winter. And I was actually quite panicked, because that meant that I might not have been able to defrost the windows, to turn the heater on, and I had to get it fixed. Nissan wanted 8,500 francs for just the computer itself, and yeah, that was a bit expensive. In other parts of the world, I know in America there is an exchange program. In Europe, Clarion, who actually produced this infotainment system, they offered an exchange program where you give in your old unit and they give you a new one, and it costs like, I believe, about $1,000 or something like that. But in Switzerland there is no such thing. In Switzerland also Clarion has no presence there, so there is no way to do this. I found a company that refurbished these in Switzerland, and they quoted me 2,000 francs for the repair, and I had to do it because I needed to have it done. So I uninstalled everything, took apart half the dash, sent it in, got the unit back, installed it. It worked for 2 days, and then it failed again. Thankfully it was warranted, so I had to uninstall it again, send it back, and I got a new one, and that one has been working now for like a year. So all is good. The only thing is, when I installed it, I didn't have the GT-R gauges because it thought it was an Infiniti and not a Nissan GT-R. So I had to go to the Nissan GT-R dealer, because regular Nissan dealers, they cannot program anything on a GT-R. You need a special GT-R diagnostic computer to be able to program control units and stuff onto a GT-R. So I had to go to the Nissan GT-R dealer. Fortunately, there is one in Zurich, and they I went there on appointment, and then he went like, yeah, you want to have the control units programmed? And I went like, yes. And he, well, let's see if it works. And I went, wait, what do you mean if it works? And he went, often these cannot even be programmed, because there's another customer, and he was in the same room, who had that exact issue. He had it repaired, and it couldn't be programmed. And then I went like, whoa, I just spent $2,000 and several hours uninstalling and installing this thing, and now you tell me that it may not even work. And he went like, hey, yeah. But then he went, he programmed it, and it turned out fine. It works, all the instruments are back, my air conditioning works again, the car is usable. So that was basically my big repair on the Nissan GT-R. But let's go to the, total cost, or let's say cost of ownership calculation, because total cost is a bit difficult when you haven't sold the car. But the cost of ownership part therefore starts now, and for that, since I don't have the data assembled now, from the future you will hear it from VoiceOver Mario.
Hearing voices again?
Really? Grow up. We can't still be doing this in every video.
Okay, boomer.
I'm a millennial.
Me, I'm a millennial.
Dude, we are the same person. You should be nicer to me.
You should be nicer to me.
Wait. You are me from the future, right?
I don't like where this is going. Oh, son of my mother.
Suits you right.
Well, let's get on with it. And by the way, this is December of 2020. So yes, it has taken me 6 months to actually finish this video. At least, this way I have now owned the car for more than 3 years. 3 years and 3 months to be exact. All prices are in Swiss francs. 1 Swiss franc is about $1 and 5 cents, about 90 euro cents, and around 80 pence sterling. And I will round all my costs to entire francs, as the cents don't really make an impact. Anyway, I bought the car in September of 2017 for 46,000 Swiss francs. After I bought it, I realized that the driver's sun visor was actually broken and wouldn't stay in place once moved. What do we learn from this? Always check everything when you test drive a car, especially when there is no warranty. So I bought a used sun visor off eBay for 58 francs and installed it myself. I figured the previous owner mangled it up when they installed the carbon fiber roof. In October I bought winter tires, as the car did not come with any. A set of Michelin Pilot Alpine 4 cost me 1,468 francs fitted. In June of the following year I bought new summer tires. The rears were worn and the front ones were still good. However, since they were not the right size, they were 20mm wider than stock, and they were the older Michelin Pilot Super Sport, I opted to get 4 new Michelin Pilot Sport 4S in the correct size. They cost me 1,501 franc fitted. I also had to replace a TPMS sensor, as it had failed. Not knowing any better back then, I had the garage install an OEM sensor for the princely sum of 238 francs. It was only later that I discovered that for that amount of money I could get 8 universal sensors from AliExpress and the TPMS programmer, which wisely I decided to buy. Because by November 2018, when I had the winter tires put back on, another sensor had to be replaced. A 20 franc sensor from AliExpress was installed this time. Added to the work for changing over the tires on the wheels and the fee for storing the summer tires, I paid 253 francs. Then, at the end of January, it happened. The multifunction display stopped working. As mentioned before, that meant no proper heating controls in the middle of winter. Luckily, by that time I had already bought my Lexus and I could swap cars until the GT-R got fixed. A refurbished infotainment control unit in exchange for my old one cost me 1,962 francs. I did the installation myself. I don't know if it's funny or if it's sad, but I have never owned a car whose center console I have not torn apart. In the meantime, since the car was down anyway, I had a service performed and the summer tires put back on. That cost me a modest 804 francs. The replacement control unit still had to be coded to the vehicle by the GT-R dealer, so that it knew it was in a GT-R and displayed the proper screens and information. I had that done at the end of May, and it cost me 107 francs. So all in all, 2,069 francs to have the infotainment and the climate control work again as specified. In November I had the winter tires put back on, and the garage topped up the oil, at a cost of 210 francs. At that point, the garage remarked that my rear brake rotors were due to be replaced as they had reached the minimal specified thickness. Knowing Nissan wanted 5,000 francs for rotors and pads, I looked into alternative options. In the end, since it's only the rear brakes, I decided not to go some crazy upgrade route and just buy aftermarket Brembo rotors, which are technically illegal as they do not come with a certificate, but they are basically identical to the OEM rotors, so I took the chance. They cost 841 francs from an online parts dealer. For the brake pads, I ordered a set of Endless MX72 directly from Japan over eBay. Including shipping and import duties, they cost me 296 francs, which is pretty much exactly half the price of what those brake pads are sold for in Switzerland. The brake job itself was a bit more involved, since the pins that hold the brakes in the calipers had seized. The car was also given a quick look over since I had gotten the invitation for its periodic inspection. Altogether that cost me 719 francs. Then lockdown happened and all the periodic inspection in the canton of Zurich were temporarily postponed. It wasn't until June that I got a new invitation for July, and by that time I knew that I was going to have my license suspended and that I would deposit my number plates, which would again suspend any inspection date due. Once I got my number plates back in October, I received a new date for the inspection. I wanted to get it done as soon as possible, however, so I anticipated the inspection to the earliest possible date. And by earliest I mean that wasn't like at 7 AM in the morning. I am not that dedicated to my cars. The second day I was allowed to drive again, the serpentine belt snapped, and getting that fixed took a few days. Turns out OEM serpentine belts and tensioners for a GT-R are quite expensive. And since I needed the car, I did not have the time to shop around. The whole job cost me 1,202 francs. Labor was actually only 1 hour at 138 francs. The parts were just ludicrously expensive, with the belt at 245 francs, the tensioner at 295 francs, and 2 pulleys at a combined 484 francs. On October the 12th, I brought the car to its inspection. And due to the pandemic, I was not allowed to go along with the car. So I had to wait outside in the cold while the car was being inspected. I was not sure if the car would pass the inspection since it technically had illegal brake rotors and an illegal number plate light. Yes, because I replaced one of the original number plate lights with an aftermarket one containing a backup camera. And since that light does not have an E mark on its glass, it's technically not legal. Luckily, the inspector either had good judgment or he was bad at his job, since he did not question those things and the car passed the inspection. Since I did not have summer tires put on this year, I did not have to swap them out for winter tires again, and I saved that cost. I did however pay 43 francs for tire storage. And that was the last maintenance related item on the car to date. So far, the car has cost me 9,726 francs in maintenance and repairs. That averages to 2,996 francs per year or 45 cents per kilometer, with 21,526 kilometers driven. Of course, I had to spend some unnecessary money on the car. It's the section I call upgrades. The plastic knobs on the center control stack looked a bit worn and cheap, so I bought a set of chrome knobs off eBay for 95 francs. You might argue that it looks blingy, but I absolutely love them as the chrome knobs remind me of a 70s hi-fi system. As mentioned before, I bought a carb access port in order to flash the transmission computer and to read fault codes. I bought it off eBay and it cost me 806 francs. When I bought the car, the side vents on the fenders were cherry red. Since I did not like the look of those, I bought a set of carbon fiber ones on AliExpress for 99 francs. The start button in my car was a bit worn and chipped. I bought a new one on eBay for only 35 francs. Since my car originally had a plastic shifter surround that looked a bit ugly, I replaced it with a leather one with red stitching from the Nismo. I bought it new on eBay for 152 francs. I installed the backup camera. The harness for the backup camera cost me 138 francs from thecarkitcompany.com. and the camera itself I bought for 14 francs on AliExpress. I installed it myself. By the way, the camera does not need to be coded, you just enable it through the infotainment's hidden menu. For reasons that are beyond my comprehension, the hood scoops of my car were sort of crooked and did not sit flush and properly in the hood. So I just bought a good used pair of scoops on eBay for 91 francs. During the whole process where I had to tear apart the center console in order to replace the infotainment computer, I managed to scratch the bezel of the multifunction display. Since I did not want to replace the entire screen just because of the scratched bezel, I bought a carbon fiber surround that sticks onto the bezel. It fits well with the rest of my carbon fiber themed interior, and it looks 100% better than that scratched bezel. It cost me 130 francs on AliExpress. I have a little phone holder in the air vent right next to the multifunction display. Since an earlier holder I used to have has scratched the blades of that air vent, I bought a new air vent on MegaZipNet for 57 francs including shipping. In total, I spent 1,617 francs on these upgrades. Next up, the running costs. I spent 5,657 francs on fuel, with an average of 15.4 liters in 100 kilometers, 6.5 kilometers per liter, 15.3 mpg US, or 18.3 mpg Imperial. Tax was thankfully almost nothing, since I have two cars on one number plate and the Lexus with its 5-liter V8 and its hefty mass is bearing all the cost. The GT-R just cost me a 40 franc fee per year, so up to today it's 130 francs. If I did not have the Lexus, the GT-R would cost me a quite reasonable 848 francs per year. And I say reasonable because the Lexus cost me almost twice as much at 1,508 francs. Insurance is 1,219 francs per year for full coverage, 3,959 francs until now. This gives us total running costs of 9,745 francs, which is 3,002 francs per year or 45 cents per kilometer. If we add repairs, maintenance, upgrades and running costs together, we get the cost of ownership, which in my case is 21,088 francs in total, 6,495 francs per year or 98 cents per kilometer. In order to calculate the total cost of ownership, we need to estimate the depreciation on the car. I reckon I could sell the car reasonably quickly for 38,000 Swiss francs. That would result in a depreciation of 8,000 francs or 2,464 francs per year. As a result, we get a total cost of ownership of 29,088 francs. This is 8,960 francs per year and 1 franc 35 cents per kilometer. So far, based on kilometers, this is the most expensive car I have ever owned. But that is mostly down to me not driving it a lot. In the earlier part of this video, Mario from the past argued that he only drives this car around 3,000 kilometers a year. But looking at these numbers here, it's obvious that I do drive this car quite a bit more. Still, an average of 6,630 kilometers per year is not much and tends to inflate the cost per kilometer. If we look at cost per year, things start to look better already. At almost 9,000 francs, the GT-R is certainly not a cheap car to own, but compared to other cars I've owned, it fares quite okay. The Lexus is currently at 15,794 francs per year, the SL55 AMG was at 10,284 francs, and that other car, whose name shall never be spoken out loud, was at 17,889 francs per year. Only the 911 Turbo was cheaper at 6,786 francs per year all in, mostly thanks to the fact that instead of depreciating, the car actually appreciated, so I managed to sell it for more money than I originally paid for it. So that's it. All in all, I'm not unhappy with the GT-R. 9 grand a year to own a car with the performance and the handling of the GT-R is a pretty good deal in my book. And to all the people wondering, no. Leasing a new GT-R would not cost the same or less money. With no money down, a new GT-R will easily exceed 1,500 francs in monthly payments on a 3-year lease. which is 18,000 francs a year, and then you still have the 3,000 francs a year in running costs and the consumables and little repairs that you have to pay out of pocket that are not covered by warranty or free servicing. Sure, it's nice to have a new car and to have a warranty and free servicing, but it comes at a massive cost. I'd rather fix a few things and buy cosmetic parts on eBay and AliExpress than spend 18 grand a year in payments alone. But that is me, and I'm not a fan of going into debt, especially for buying frivolous things such as sports cars. But now, we finally reached a part of the video that you actually wanted to see. The completely unrelated food part. But first, please consider subscribing to my channel if you want to see future updates on my cars, maybe share this video with somebody you know might be interested in it, and tell me in the comments down below, what do you think are reasonable costs for owning a sports car like a GT-R? Anyway, I'm done talking, thank you for watching this very long video, and please enjoy the food. Have a nice day, bye!